The second issue of Midnight Suns opens with Victoria Montesi having a vision of a Chicago hospital, its hallways filled with blood. You ever seen that scene in The Shining where, like, the elevator opens and blood comes pouring down the hospital? Or pouring down the hallway? It's that, but in a Chicago hospital. The Midnight Suns are still in northern Iraq, having just recruited Montesi to their quest to stop and or kill Blade. It turns out that all of them, Montesi, Tulip, Ketch, and Blaze, have all had the same dream/vision. Whatever is going on in that hospital, it is connected to Blade somehow. Montesi says that she'll go deal with it alone if she has to, but don't worry, she's not. They've all been at this long enough to know that they have a job to do, even if it isn't the one that they expected. In Springfield, Illinois, we follow a nurse through a bit of her night. She comforts a child who heard that Spider-Man is a vampire. And damn, word travels fast. He's been a vampire for like 5 minutes over in Bloodhunt. She assures the kid that Spider-Man is a hero and then moves on for the rest of her rounds. She encounters a vampire in the hallways who uses a fingernail to cut a line down his own face before peeling his own skin off. It is a really slow moment and it is intentionally drawn out. It is like framed in a way that feels very much like a horror movie. It's a hardcore sequence and it works. I really like it. This vampire then charges the woman who is trapped in the hallway. But of course, that's when the Midnight Suns show up, baby. Ketch, as Ghost Rider, wraps the vampire up in flaming chains, yanks him out of there, and gives him the good old penance stare, prepare to feel the pain of all the harm you've ever caused. The other Suns secure the nurse and explain what they're doing there. The nurse tells them that something's been off in this hospital for quite some time. She has been seeing shadows where there should be none, hearing things that aren't there. A patient disappeared just a year ago, just vanished. She had thought that it was all just superstitions or fears. You know, it's just kind of the weird stuff you accept about life, but you know, maybe Spider-Man really is a vampire. She asks them if they're there to help. Johnny Blaze thinks that they are, and Montesi seems to have an idea as to why they are there. And suddenly, Blade jumps through a window nearby. Blaze draws his Hellfire shotgun and fires, but he just barely nicks his old ally, who twists in midair. Blade spins away from the blast, attacking Tulip. She dodges the wild swing, shouting for him to stop. But Blade answers that Blade isn't here. A second blast from the Hellfire shotgun scatters Blade into a dozen bats, which fly away into the night. Danny volunteers to chase him down. After all, the rider will have his scent now. But Victoria says not to. He came here to distract them from whatever is going on. She cuts her hand and the blood hits the floor. When it does, it activates a red demonic sigil that has been burned into the floor, carved into the floor. Whatever the case, this is a doorway to hell, and they have to close it. I'm not going to see the Midnight Suns confront Blade, am I? My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown's coverage of Bloodhunt, Episode 14. We're going on a side quest. The absolute second that Victoria had that vision of the hospital, I knew that we were getting side quested. And honestly, it makes sense to give these characters a side quest. Like with Doctor Strange back in issue 16, this is a group of characters that could, potentially, solve the Blade problem, so it makes sense that Varney would keep them busy saving lives, distracting them with some other problem. And I actually like that none of the characters even question it. When Victoria tells Johnny that this is something she has to do, whether they like it or not, he just kind of shrugs. He's like, yeah, if we all had this dream, it's clearly all connected somehow. We've been brought together for a purpose. If this is the purpose, let's do it. I love that sense of experience showing in these characters. I love that calm, cold acceptance of this is the job. Let's go. Maybe it's not what we want it to be, but we're going to do it. Maybe the Suns won't get to deal with Blade directly, but they're going to do good work regardless. Which I don't like, personally. But in terms of allowing the heroes over in Bloodhunt to save the day, I guess it makes sense. Very reluctant on enjoying this one, apparently. Author Brian Hill does continue to use a slow writing pace, focusing more on the horror storytelling of this particular story than on the character work of it. The scene with that vampire attack is slow, it's creepy, it reads like it's a horror movie. And I unequivocally love that. They do a great job. Even the nurse's rattled, shaken dialogue afterwards is great. The Midnight Suns have been exposed to this kind of crap so many times that honestly they're numb to it. And as are we as an audience. A vampire doesn't scare them or us. But this nurse, alone, working the night shift, just trying to keep a kid safe, tired and bored and dealing with this crap for the first time, to her this is absolutely terrifying. And so I think that that's a smart move on Hill's part. He put us in her shoes first. He made us empathize with her first. And I fear for her safety in a way that I would never fear for the safety of any of the Midnight Suns. I was honestly surprised to see Blade show up here at all. When we got side quested, I just figured, yeah, right, he's going to have nothing to do with this. That's okay. I wish he would show up, but it's fine. And then he does show up. So to get a side quest and then still get to face Blade, in a scene that doesn't feel like Blade, though. Because again, like I pointed out with the first issue of the Midnight Suns miniseries, this feels like something leading up to the main event of Bloodhunt, as opposed to something happening concurrently. Once again, when the Midnight Suns confront Blade and he says, "The Blade isn't here," line, the way the dialogue is written, it makes it look like something is like fighting to say those words, while over in Bloodhunt, Varney is in full control of Blade. He's calm, he's got a swagger to the way he's walking and moving, none of this hit and run kind of tactics. So it does seem like there's a big difference between Blade here and Blade in the main series. And then there's also a degree of like, why is Blade here at all? Like, the idea that he's distracting the Midnight Suns makes sense to me. Again, the idea that he needs to either eliminate threats or keep them busy enough that they can't affect what he's doing in New York makes sense. It's a smart play. It shows a good strategy on Varney's part. But if you want them distracted, why wouldn't you just send the Blood Coven? Or send like an army of vampires to attack this hospital? Or just I'm going to say it again. Send like a vampirically mind-controlled Hannibal King, who at least has a personal connection to the Midnight Suns. He was one of them, for Christ's sakes. If we're gonna Midnight Suns, then let's midnight fuck. I wonder if the threat that we're dealing with here, with this portal to hell, isn't actually Lilith. I have to believe that author Hill showed us Montesi's connection to her back in issue 1 for a reason, right? He is setting her up for something. She's either the solution to this problem, or she's secretly the problem. So maybe Lilith is in hell working to, like, send energy to Varney to let him possess Blade. Or maybe, like, she's got his soul or Blade's spirit trapped in hell, allowing Varney to then possess his body, right? Echoing what we're seeing over in Doctor Strange with Victor. That could be interesting. Like, maybe Lilith has custody of Blade's soul in hell, and the next issue is going to be them busting him out of hell or something like that. That could be really cool, and then we could see that affect some of the other books. This particular issue of Midnight Suns mostly sold me on the horror of this story more than anything else. The characters are pretty one note. They all sound like themselves, but nothing interesting is happening with them. It doesn't look like we're really going to impact the main Bloodhunt narrative, given we've been so thoroughly side-quested. And honestly, nothing much happens in this issue. Otherwise, this is very much like a tone comic to keep things slow and spooky. It's a fairly quiet middle issue. The pacing of it's pretty solid. This is one of those issues. I don't really complain a lot about the cost of a comic, because a comic costs what a comic costs. But in terms of, is the value of what you're getting worth the cost? By the time we finish the Midnight Suns miniseries, we're going to have paid $12 for this story, and I don't know if that's kind of going to be enough for me. I love the tone, but the characters aren't really doing anything here. The action sequence was really quick and just like 3 pages and not very interesting. I don't know. I suppose I should save my final thoughts until I've read all of it. But this, as much as I liked the first one and the setup that we got, I don't feel like that this does enough of anything to kind of be like, yeah, I wasn't excited reading this issue. I was just, yeah, that was an issue. And then got on with my life, which is a little disappointing. Next episode, we're going to be returning to the main story of Blood Hunt issue 4. We're going to start to see some things that have been happening elsewhere show up, and we're going to set up a couple new things. This issue was really good. I'm very excited to talk to y'all about Blood Hunt issue 4. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.